Got this 2005 Nissan Sentra. It has a front left wheel bearing that's bad. I don't know if you can notice this, but look how bad. The steering wheel is straight, by the way. Look how bad that's tucking out. It's so bad that it's putting pressure on the caliper bracket. So you can see it's starting to chew up the rotor a little bit. They just like pad slapped it last night. Her husband thought it was the brakes that were grinding, so he slapped pads on it yesterday, and it was still there. And that's when they found out that the wheel bearing was bad. They took it to a shop, and the shop said, oh, you need a lower control arm, when the wheel bearing was just like clearly like wobbling. And she was like, what do you mean needs a control arm? Like, don't you see what's going on here? So after that, she said they took it to like 3 different shops, and all the shops said that they didn't have the tool to press out the wheel bearing. I thought that was really odd. I'm like, what shops are you taking it to? Because that's, I don't know, it just blows my mind. Doesn't make sense. Anyways, I told her, yeah, I could get it done. So here we are. This might be the worst wheel bearing I've seen. Isn't that crazy? That's nuts. You know what's funny is she just got this tire put on today, and when she was showing me the wheel bearing, she noticed all the dry rotting, and she was like, what kind of tire did they just sell me? They just put this on today. Look, it's already cracking. I didn't want to bother to ask what she paid for it, because I know it's probably like 30-40 bucks. You know, if you want an actual new tire, you might be like, who knows, 70 to 120, you know what I mean? So I didn't care to ask. But yeah, I mean, are you surprised that they showed you a $30 tire or $40 tire and it's all dry rotted? Anyway, this is pretty bad, guys. The good thing is that they did bring me all the correct parts. I don't want to say correct, I mean the parts that are necessary. So we have a new hub, which most people don't bring you a hub. All they do is bring you the bare minimum, just the bearing itself. And they even got me a new retainer clip, which is real nice. So it's no surprise that the old hub practically fell right out. I got the old wheel bearing pressed out. There it goes right there in pieces. The new one is already installed, and all I have to do is put on the snap ring. So this is the snap ring that came out, and before I even touched it, I noticed that this edge over here was not seated. It was like picked up a little bit. And if we look at this now, I didn't damage this. This is exactly how it came out, because it actually came off really easy. You can see how that's not really round. It's more of like an oval. So this is no good. I don't want to reuse this. The one that she brought me, brand spanking new, doesn't fit. You can see how it's way too large. That's not gonna work, guys. So I've learned my lesson with these type of wheel bearings, where it turns out you need a brand new snap ring. And I've spent hours driving from store to store to store looking for these damn rings. So I learned my lesson. I went on Rock Auto a while ago. I bought a few of them, and then I realized that, you know, if I get one off of a car that's in decent condition, just go ahead and keep it. Don't throw it out, because you may need it someday. So I'm gonna see which one matches up to the one that came off as far as the size. So yeah, you can see we definitely have some here that might work. If I don't have to use one of my brand new ones, I won't, because these cost money and I'm not going to be charging the customer for this. So, you know, I'm going to give her, like, if I could find this used one that fits, which this one looks like it might get the job done, I might just end up using this one, or maybe even this one. Yeah. So it's always nice to have spares. And looking at the hub, this is where I was really happy that she brought me a brand new hub, because look how tapered that thing is, and it is just destroyed. This will not, how do I say this? I've had this problem before where this isn't going to press into the inner race. It'll fit very loose, and it's going to cause you all kinds of problems. You don't want to reuse something like this. So this is why when the wheel bearing is this bad that it's shaking like crazy and there's that much play, always replace the hub. Normally I could reuse the hub, just pull the race off of it, and the hub is usually fine. But in cases like this where it was pretty severe, replace the hub. As I want to show you that the snap ring that I chose fit perfectly. It snapped right into its groove and everything looks good. At this point, I'm just gonna go ahead and spray this with CRC, because these tend to rot away and then they become a nightmare to try to remove. So that right there is good enough, and it'll protect all this metal. Now I can go ahead and press in our brand new hub. The wheel bearing is all done, nice and solid, The only thing that's moving now is that lower control arm. I do feel a little bit of play in it, but the wheel bearing itself is solid. That'll be fine. It's got like another 2 months in it. All right, so the wheel bearing's all done. Let's go out for that test drive. Guys, listen to this car. Some shop just put an engine in this thing. It cost them like $2,000 or something like that. The belt is whining like that because the tensioner is damaged and they have no power steering. It's hard to turn because the tensioner for the power steering, I don't know what the heck happened, but the bracket for the tensioner is bent all out of shape, so you can't put tension on the belt. So if the belt doesn't have tension on the pulley, it doesn't spin the pulley, and you have no power steering. All right, so I'm out test driving this Sentra, and yeah, pretty good. All the wheel bearing noise is gone. I didn't care to drive it beforehand because I could see how bad the wheel bearing was. There was no need to drive it, but yeah, it sounds good. Clearly the wheel bearing problem has been fixed, so that's gonna be about it. Now I could see why the woman was driving with no power steering, and it wasn't really a big concern because this kind of reminds me of the CRX. You know, when you're not moving, no power steering, yeah, it sucks, but once the car gets moving, it's pretty easy to turn this car because it's a small, lightweight car. So yeah, I could see it not being a major concern at the moment. What else was I going to say? The front end just sounds like like a bag of D's. Okay, it's just everything's rattling and clunking around. Now she did say she was recently in a fender bender up front, and you can see the front bumper's all messed up, the headlights, and that's kind of what led to the bad wheel bearing, she said. So well, you know, that's that. Oh, one more thing is, when she drove it over here, she said that the pedal feels really spongy and it just doesn't feel really good when you're trying to stop. And I told her I'm pretty sure that the wheel bearing is going to fix that issue. What's going on there is, I've explained this before, when a wheel bearing is this bad, you got the wheel bearing that is I don't know what to say, it like off center, or it's like tilted. So that means it's pushing the rotor into the brake pads, essentially forcing the brake pads back into the caliper further than they should be. So every time you go to push the brake pedal, you have all that travel to make up for it. And now that the wheel bearing is fixed, the rotor is right on center where it's supposed to be, and the pedal absolutely feels fantastic now. No issues at all with this brake pedal. So I told her I was pretty confident that as long as nothing else was wrong with the car, that she would kind of kill two birds with one stone here. It would fix her bad wheel bearing and all the looseness in the wheel, as well as fixing her brake problem. So that's gonna be it for this one, guys. The car is good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and park this turd. We're back with this Nissan Sentra, the one I did that wheel bearing on. They want to go ahead and get the power steering fixed, but a noise has developed. It sounds like a ticking noise coming from the engine, or a knocking noise. So in their desperate attempt to fix this, they went ahead and changed the oil, which I told them they probably shouldn't have done that. They should have let me at least get a sample of the oil, see what's going on. I'll turn the engine on so you guys can hear it right now. She took it to AutoZone and they said that's injector tick. That is definitely not the injectors ticking. It's much louder than that. The thing is, it doesn't sound like it's coming from up here. If you go underneath the car, it sounds like the knocking or ticking noise is coming from underneath. And I have like a test scope right here, you know, one of these things that the doctors use, and I was listening for the sound, putting it anywhere I could possibly think of on the engine, and I don't hear that knocking or ticking noise translating through the tool. Specifically, I had it on the oil pan, you know, exhaust manifold, the valve cover, things like that, and just looking for where this noise is coming from, and I can't pinpoint it, but it definitely sounds like underneath the engine. Well, the exhaust is also broken. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it sounds like something engine related. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Hopefully you guys can hear that already. I'm gonna go ahead and raise the RPM. Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear that at a certain RPM, like 2000 RPM or 1500, something like that, the noise kind of goes away. And then once you drop below that RPM, the noise comes back again. I told the owner if she could somehow give me a sample of the oil that came out, because they said they still have the container by their house. So I want to see if there's any metal particles in it, you know, glitter. Maybe like indication of a failing bearing or something like that. And what we're hearing is like rod knock or something, you know, who knows. But in any case, I told her, hey, even if this engine is on its way out, what's your plans for? Are you going to put another engine in this car? Because remember, this engine's already been replaced. She's like, no, I don't think I want to put another engine on it. I'm just going to get rid of it if that's the case. So I told her, well, at that point, just drive it till the wheels fall off. But the thing is, she said she's really tired of having no power steering. She said it sucks driving this thing around. So I told her, do you still want to invest the money in paying me for labor to put this power steering, you know, assembly on and getting all of this fixed? You know, if the engine's on its way out, at least drive it till the wheels fall off and at least your power steering works. And then when it finally fails, get rid of it. So that's the route she wants to go. She's like, yeah, you know what, I'd rather, even if it's on its like last leg, I want to have the power steering working. So these are the parts we have. These came from eBay off of a salvage yard car, and I believe her husband went to the junkyard and he got these parts just in case. I don't know why he got this. This looks like a water pump pulley. You can see it doesn't match to the power steering pump. It's a completely different size. That's what this looks like. And then this, I don't know why is there orange paint on the outside. Honestly, I would probably just reuse the one that's on this car already. I mean, unless something were to break, like the plastic breaks or something, then I'll use this one. But other than that, I don't see no reason why we can't reuse the reservoir that's already on the car. This bracket right here is actually what's bent. You can see how nice and straight all this stuff looks. That's how it should be. So for a second, I thought about seeing if I could just transfer over the bracket and keep the pump on the car. But this pump looks like it's in really decent shape compared to, you know, this one that's on the car. So I don't know, I might just end up putting the whole pump on. Okay, so it turns out the water pump pulley came with the eBay kit, because I just realized in order to get to these bolts right here to remove this bracket off of the power steering pump, you need to get behind the pulley for the water pump. So I just had to remove the one off of this car to get to these two bolts. So I'm pretty much all done here. I got the power steering pump installed. All the lines are connected. Everything is torqued down. There's a good amount of tension on the belt. It feels good. I got the reservoir up here connected. All the lines are connected. It's pretty much ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and fill up the system with brand new power steering fluid, and we'll go from there. Let's see if this whole thing works. All right, so here goes our first startup. I'm just gonna let it run for a few seconds to suck in that initial power steering fluid, and then we'll continue to bleed the system. All right, so the good news is they're like, oh no, he's got good news, that means he has bad news, right? So the good news is the power steering works. Okay, the system has been bled. There's no more air pockets or bubbles coming out the fluid, and everything's good. But the problem is that loud squealing noise whenever you start up the engine, it lasts maybe like 5 seconds, is still there. So even though the power steering belt was extremely loose and didn't do anything to turn the power steering pump, obviously it's why we're in here, the fact that that thing is now properly tensioned and we still have that same exact squeal, we could rule out the belt for the power steering pump, because this car actually has two belts. It has one that drives the power steering pump as well as the water pump. Then it has another belt that runs the alternator, the AC compressor. So that's the belt that I'm assuming the tension is also loose on it. And let's see if we could put a little bit more tension on that belt and get rid of this annoying squeal. All right, so I just finished tensioning the main drive belt, this one right here in front. I just gave the little screw a few turns, maybe like 3 turns, and then I tightened everything back down. Let's see if that made a difference, or if this thing's just gonna scream like crazy. Would you look at that? Sweet, no more squealing. She has been driving this car forever with that squealing noise because they always thought that the squealing noise was coming from the loose tension on the power steering belt. Little did they know, it was actually the other belt that was squealing. The power steering belt was just responsible for no power steering. Kind of killed two birds with one stone here. Sweet. I'm just about done here. This thing, that noise, honestly, I feel like it may be related to the exhaust. I'm gonna try to give you guys a shot of this exhaust underneath the car. You could hear how loud it is. All right, so here we are underneath the car. I'm just coming from the passenger side. You could see the exhaust is clearly broken, and the only thing that's connected is the flex pipe. And look at that inside of there. That looks really weird. I don't know. I would imagine that little mesh thing is somewhat restricted. The way it looks like it's kind of kinked and bent up like that. I'm not sure how much exhaust flow can get past this right here, but it's definitely not a good thing, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's possible that this engine is knocking, but these little things tend to be bulletproof for the most part. Okay, I've seen these, they tend to have head gasket issues, but besides that, I don't think I've ever seen one with like rod knock or anything like that. And yeah, they just changed the oil, but they said plenty of oil came out this thing. They said they got the whole gallon full of oil, so it wasn't like it was low on oil. But honestly, I would tackle that exhaust first before, you know, going down this crazy expensive route of thinking that something's wrong with the engine. Oh, and now that I remember, it's funny that I mentioned that these things typically have head gasket problems, because that's the whole reason why she got an engine put in this thing. The last one blew a head gasket, and they just found it cheaper to have a shop put an engine in it rather than to do a head gasket job and timing chain and all that crap. So that's what happened with this car and why it got a brand new engine. I don't want to say brand new. You get what I'm trying to say. So I'm just about ready for that test drive. I got the lug nuts torqued down on this side, and I noticed that lower ball joint is pretty much destroyed. The whole thing just wobbles back and forth. A car like this, you don't go through the trouble and the labor price of pressing in a ball joint. You just replace the whole arm. It's the best thing for this car, because that way you get a brand new ball joint and you get your two rear bushings on the control arm brand new, the ones that bolt to the subframe. And then on this side, if you remember correctly, last time I was here that I did the wheel bearing, she said she put a new tire on it, right? Well, it's only been like a week or two, and this thing is already showing the metal wire coming out the tire back here. And look how it's just eating through it. That tire is practically a slick right now. So when I jacked it up, this thing just wobbles like crazy. The lower control arm, the bushings on it where it bolts to the subframe are destroyed. Okay, and that was probably, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Did the bad lower control arm take out that wheel bearing, or did the wheel bearing go bad? They kept driving it and it caused, you know, it put extra stress on the control arm. Who knows? The point is, this lady is going to go ahead and get new lower control arms. She doesn't know it, but I'm about to let her know. So that's going to be next on her list. So I just took it out for a test drive, and I even started it up like 3 or 4 times just to make sure that squealing isn't going to happen when they come to pick up the car, and it's been solid. Power steering works, no more squealing, so it's all set. They could come pick it up. And that left front lower control arm is pretty bad. The bushings are so worn out that there's almost like no more rubber on it, that it's just like metal on metal contact. So when you're going over bumps, you could actually feel the, I don't know what to call it, like the suspension kind of swaying out of alignment, because that's essentially what's happening. As you turn left or right, it's allowing that lower control arm to move way too much, and you could hear like metal on metal, and that's because there's no more rubber bushing there. So yeah, it's pretty bad. And you know, once she comes pick it up, I'll let her know about it, and hopefully we could get that job. So it's about a week later, and we are back with this Nissan. I convinced the owner to replace the lower control arms and the front stabilizer links. Now, she wanted to like go on Amazon, and you know how they sell those sets real cheap. Like you could get 2 lower control arms, all 4 tie rods, stabilizer links, bushings, like a whole kit, everything for like $100. They're cheap. And they wanted to do that, but I told them, you know what, it's not the best option, because I guarantee you'll be having to do all this work over again in about a year, because those are cheap parts. It's the reason why they're able to sell them that cheap. So I convinced her to, you know what, let's fix what's actually wrong, okay? which is the lower control arms. And if we're doing the lower control arms, we might as well do the stabilizer links because they're connected to the lower control arm. You get what I'm saying? So that's all we're doing. So I convinced her, let's buy some better quality parts, which I like to use Delphi. To me, I've been using them for years and they are a decent quality for their price. So I convinced her to ditch the cheap Amazon stuff. We'll get some Delphi parts on the car and fix what's actually wrong instead of just buying a kit and throwing everything at it, even though they're like super cheap parts. You know, that's not the route that the owner wants to go with this, because she said she's not trying to get rid of the car. You know, the way the market is nowadays, she's trying to hold on to it. By the way, like I said, it's been like a week since she got the car back. The power steering has been, and no more noise whenever she turns it on. She said all that squealing noise is gone. So I'm happy that she's happy. Here you can see how bad this lower control arm. This is just one side. I removed the 3 bolts, and look, this whole thing just slid right off of the lower control arm. That's crazy. Look how worn out that thing is. It's supposed to be over this part. So I'm not joking when it's pretty bad. And it looks like she went and got a different tire already, and this one looks way better than the one she had on it before. So that's good to see. Now you tell me, guys, do I need to show you guys anymore? LOL. I got the front left floor control arm off of the car. You can see it came off in pieces. This part immediately separated. The bushing from inside of here just fell apart. Ball joints pretty much wasted. Got the stabilizer link off, and here goes all of our new parts. So let me go ahead and put this on. You can see the stabilizer link goes in right here. You can see why I wanted to replace these while doing this job. I got the right side control arm off of the car. You can see this bushing right here. Not as bad as the other side, but it's getting there. This one right here isn't too bad, but this ball joint is completely destroyed. So yeah, you know, you add up the slot from there, the slot from here, and it just messes everything up. The tire on this side, it's pretty much bald on the inside of the tire. It's not as bad as the left side was, but if you look at this, you can see a pattern right there, but it's absolutely bald on all of this side. All right, so I'm all done with the lower control arm on the front right side, as well as the stabilizer link. You can see it right there. But nothing is really torqued down just yet, minus the ball joint right here. So what I'm going to do is put the wheels on it, and I'm going to drive the car up on my ramps. That way the suspension is loaded, and then I'll go ahead and torque down everything with the suspension loaded. So I got both of the wheels on the car, and it feels a million times better. There's a slight little wobble, but that's because I haven't torqued down the lower control arm yet. Remember I said I have to put it up on the ramps to tighten the bolts. So the bolts that go to the subframe are still loose. That's why we're feeling that little bit of wobble, but this is going to be 100%. This side, unfortunately, it has a bad outer tie rod. So even though it's still way better than before, there's a slight little rock, and it is the outer tie rod. We can't even see it from here. Oh, there it goes. So that joint is a little bit loose. Even though it's only one side, I'm going to recommend that she gets both the front left and front right done at the same time before she takes it in for wheel alignment. If you're wondering why we just didn't all do it all at once, okay, again, we're on a budget, okay? But it looks like that's going to be the final thing. 2 outer tie rods, and this thing could go in for wheel alignment. And of course, she's going to have to change this tire. But guys, it's much better. The lower control arms made a big difference. All right, so I'm just about done. You can see the car is up on ramps. Got the stabilizer link all torqued down from underneath the lower control arm, and the main bolts for the control arm, everything is torqued down, and pretty much the same exact thing on this side. I'm tired, guys. I'm wet, I'm dirty. The car came in while it was raining, and me rolling around here on the ground, I'm just filthy. So I'm done messing around with this turd. Let me change my clothes. We'll take it out for a test drive. It's about 2 weeks later. We are back with this Nissan Sentra, and we have 2 new outer tie rods, so left and right side. And there we have it. New tie rod, everything's torqued down. Got the new cotter pin installed, and this thing is ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock out the front right side. So I just finished up on the front right side here. Tie rod is all done and all of the play is gone. Both of the front wheels are nice and solid. They don't wobble around or anything like that. So this thing could go in for a wheel alignment and it should be all set. All right, so I took it out for a test drive and it drove fine, but if I kept the steering wheel straight and I come look at both of the front wheels, I could see the front driver's side or the left side, the wheel looks straight in accordance to the steering wheel. But the front right side, it looked like it had way too much toe in. Basically, it was pointing that way. So I used a measuring tape and my daughter helped me measure in front and behind of the tires, and I adjusted the tie rod only on the passenger side so that both of the front wheels are parallel with each other. Of course, it still needs to go in for a wheel alignment, but at least in the meantime, it doesn't just completely chew up these tires. In order to go straight down the road, I have to hold the steering wheel just slightly to the left, so nothing major. But the important thing is if I let go of the steering wheel going straight down the road, it continues to go straight down the road. It's not pulling or anything like that. So this is why it's so important to get those front wheels parallel to each other, and why I like to spend extra time trying to get the toe as close as I possibly can, because at very least it saves the customer some time. Okay, they have more time to get money put together to take it in for a proper wheel alignment. And it's always a good thing that the car drives halfway decent leaving my garage, because anyone could slap tie rods on and say, oh, take it directly to the wheel alignment shop, and you know, if you drive it around even for a few days, it just eats right through your tires. But I like to put in that extra time and try to get the toe as close as I could possibly get it. I'm really happy with the way this car is driving, considering all the work that's been done to it, and it hasn't gone in for a proper wheel alignment. I think it's pretty damn good. So that's going to be it for this car. I'm going to go ahead and park this turd and owner can come pick it up.